The first time I understood that my body was not entirely my own, I was standing barefoot in our kitchen at 5 in the morning, holding a glass of water I was no longer allowed to drink. My husband had decided the night before that I would begin fasting on Wednesdays. He had not asked me. He had announced it. And as I stood there in the dim blue light before sunrise, with that cool glass pressed against my palm, I realized something that took my breath away. I had no framework, no scripture, no community rule to push back against him. Because in the Amish world I came from, this was his decision to make. And I had said yes to that the day I said yes to him. Before I tell you the rest, let me introduce myself. My name is Martha, and this is Hannah the Amish Girl, the channel where I share the truths we were never allowed to speak out loud. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, and what I'm about to share is not one dramatic story. It is many small ones stitched together the way a quilt is stitched, until you step back and finally see the pattern. If you value hearing what Amish life is really like from someone who actually lived it, please subscribe and tap that like button. And in the comments, tell me. Before today, did you know how much an Amish husband is allowed to decide about his wife's body? I read every single answer. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. Let me start where every Amish marriage starts, with the vows. When you stand before the bishop on your wedding Thursday, you do not promise to love. You promise to yield. The German word is Gelassenheit, and it means surrender. Surrender to God, surrender to the church, and for a wife, surrender to your husband as the head of the household. That word head is not symbolic. It is structural. It is the load-bearing beam of every Amish home. And what most outsiders never understand is that this beam touches everything. Not just the big decisions like whether to buy a new horse or join a different church district. It touches the smallest, most private corners of a wife's daily life, including her body. I was 19 when I married Jonas. He was 22, quiet, with hands that smelled like sawdust because he worked in his father's furniture shop. He was kind. I want you to hear that clearly before I tell you anything else. Jonas was not a cruel man. He was a man raised inside a system that told him from the time he was old enough to walk that one day a woman's body would fall under his stewardship. And stewardship in our world does not mean partnership. It means responsibility. And responsibility means decision-making power. Let me tell you what that looked like in practice. 3 months into our marriage, I went to the dry goods store with my mother-in-law, and I bought a small bottle of lotion. Plain, unscented. Just for my hands, which had cracked open from the winter washing. When I unpacked the buggy that evening, Jonas saw the bottle on the counter. He picked it up, turned it slowly in his fingers, read the label, and set it back down. He said, "We don't need things like this. Take it back tomorrow." I stood there in the kitchen with flour on my apron, and I did not argue. Because in our church district, the Ordnung, our unwritten code, said that a wife's appearance fell under her husband's authority. He could decide what she put on her skin, what she wore under her dress, how tightly she pinned her prayer cap, whether she could use the small luxuries that English women took for granted. The lotion went back the next day, and my hands kept cracking through January. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. Here is what I want you to understand, because this is the part that took me years to put into words. The control was not loud, it was not cruel. It was woven so deeply into the fabric of marriage that I did not even recognize it as control. I just thought it was being a wife. Let me give you the 4 areas where an Amish husband's authority over his wife's body is the strongest. Not in every district, not in every home, but in mine and in most old order homes I knew. The first area is reproduction. This one shocks outsiders the most. In my community, the decision about when to have children, how many to have, and whether to use any kind of family planning belonged almost entirely to the husband. The church taught that children were a blessing from God and that limiting them was a form of pride, of trying to control what only God should control. But in practice, the man held the line. If a wife was exhausted after her fourth or fifth baby, if her body needed rest, if she quietly asked her husband to wait, the answer was usually no. My sister Rebecca had 7 children in 9 years. After the 6th, she begged the midwife to tell her husband she needed time. The midwife refused. She said, "That is not my place. It is between him and God." The second area is medical care. This one I did not fully understand until it was mine. When I needed to see a doctor, an English doctor outside the community, Jonas decided whether I went. He decided whether the cost was worth it. He decided whether the symptom was serious enough. When I had a lump in my breast at 26, small, hard, and frightening, I waited 4 months to tell him because I was afraid he would say it was vanity to worry. When I finally told him, he prayed about it for 2 weeks before agreeing to take me to town. The lump turned out to be benign, but those 4 months of silence, those 2 weeks of waiting, those belonged to him, not to me. The third area is appearance. Everything about how an Amish wife presents her body falls under her husband's stewardship. The length of her dress, the color of the fabric, which in stricter districts must be approved shades of blue, green, purple, or black, whether her prayer cap is the right shape for the district, whether her hair, which a married woman never cuts, is pinned correctly, whether she wears the apron over her dress at all times outside the bedroom. If Jonas thought my dress was too bright or my cap was too loose, he could tell me to change, and I would. The fourth area, and this is the one no one talks about, is intimacy itself. In Old Order theology, a wife does not have the right to refuse her husband. The phrase used, when it is used at all, is that a wife should be available, not willing. Available. There is a difference, and every Amish woman knows it in her bones, even if she has never been given the words for it. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I want to tell you about my friend Edna. She was 24, married 5 years, 3 children. One winter, she came to my kitchen to help me can apples, and as we stood at the stove with the steam rising between us, she said something so quiet I almost missed it. She said, "Sometimes I just want my body to belong to me for 1 hour." I did not know what to say. I stood there with a wooden spoon in my hand, and I felt the truth of it land somewhere deep in my chest, because I had felt it too. I had just never let myself think it. That night I lay in bed beside Jonas, listening to him breathe, and I thought about Edna's words. 1 hour, just 1 hour where no one else had a claim on her skin, her time, her energy, her decisions. And I realized I could not remember the last hour of my own life that had not belonged to someone else. My father until I was 19, my husband after that, the church always, God above all. And somewhere underneath all those layers of stewardship was a woman I had never actually met. Me. Let me explain how the system trains you for this from the time you are a little girl. From age 6, you are taught that obedience is the highest virtue for a woman. Not kindness, not wisdom, obedience. You obey your father, your mother, your older brothers, your teachers, and eventually your husband. You learn that asking why is a form of pride. You learn that wanting is dangerous. You learn that your body is a vessel, first for godliness, then for childbearing, then for service. You are never taught that it is also yours. By the time you stand in front of the bishop at 18 or 19 or 20, you do not even feel the weight of what you are surrendering, because you were never allowed to hold it in the first place. There came a moment, about 4 years into my marriage, when something inside me began to shift. It was small at first, a hesitation before I said yes, a pause before I changed my dress, a second of silence before I poured Jonas his coffee. He noticed. Of course he noticed. One evening at the supper table, he set down his fork and said, "Martha, you have been quiet. I want you to remember that a soft answer turns away wrath." I nodded. I gave him a soft answer. But inside, something had hardened. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. I had been feeling unwell for weeks, tired in a way that sleep did not fix, dizzy when I stood up too fast. I told Jonas I wanted to see a doctor. He said we would pray about it. I said I had already prayed. He looked at me like I was a stranger, and in that moment I realized I was a stranger. To him, to the community, and most of all to myself. Because the woman who had just said I had already prayed was not the woman he had married. She was someone new, someone who had begun quietly to belong to herself. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. I left 6 months later. I will not pretend it was clean. Shunning is not clean. My mother's letters came back unopened. My father would not look at me when I tried to visit. My sisters were forbidden to speak my name at the supper table. The Maidong is a kind of death where everyone you love agrees together that you no longer exist. And yet I survived it, because the alternative was a different kind of death. The slow one, the quiet one, the kind where you wake up at 60 and realize you never lived in your own skin. In therapy, an English therapist gave me 3 words I had never been allowed to hold: bodily autonomy. She said them the way you would hand someone a glass of water after a long walk in the sun. Gently, like she knew I had been thirsty for a very long time. I cried in her office for an hour, not because the words were sad, but because they had been mine all along, and no one had ever told me. Here is what I have come to understand. The Amish world is not a monster. It is a system. And like every system, it has gifts and it has costs. The gifts are real: community, faith. A way of living that does not depend on screens or speed or constant noise. I will not pretend those things are nothing. They are everything to the people who have them. But the cost, for women, is high. And the highest cost is the one no one names out loud. Your body, your decisions, your inner life, all of it gets folded under someone else's authority before you are old enough to know what you are giving away. And by the time you are old enough to understand, the system has already taught you that wanting it back is a sin. I am 34 now. I live in a small apartment with a window that faces east, and every morning I drink a glass of water in the sunrise, and no one tells me whether I am allowed to. That sounds like a small thing. It is not. It is the smallest and largest freedom I have ever known. If you grew up in a place where your body belonged to everyone but you, I see you. If you ever stood in a kitchen holding a bottle of lotion and learned that even that small comfort was not yours to choose, I see you. If you are still inside a marriage or a community or a belief system that treats your skin like a shared possession, your wanting is not wrong. Your wanting is the part of you that is still alive. The Amish husband's authority over his wife's body is not written in any one rule. It is written in 1,000 small ones. The lotion you cannot buy, the doctor you cannot visit, the child you cannot postpone, the hour you cannot keep for yourself. And none of those rules feel like control while you are living inside them. They just feel like marriage. It took me leaving to understand that marriage is not supposed to feel like a slow surrender of your own skin. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what part stayed with you. Tell me your own story if you are ready, and if you want to keep hearing the truths from behind the prayer cap, subscribe to Hannah the Amish Girl. There is still so much I have not said. If you want to go deeper, the full Amish Insider Guide is in the description. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.